Hello everyone, welcome to another Photoshop tutorial. If you watched the other one, you'll know that I am a photographer, so most of my tutorials are going to be based around helping other photographers use Photoshop. When I first started out, I learned Photoshop by trial and error and watching other people's YouTube videos. So it's time to help other people as well. Today we're going to be doing a bit of beauty retouching. Now, I am by no means a high-end beauty retoucher. I just don't do enough beauty headshots to really warrant learning that much about retouching skin and beauty and things of that nature. But I do on occasion do some headshots, and I do know how to make people's skin and everything look better. I still took a lot of time and learned a lot of the processes that I'll show you here, but definitely go around and look around on YouTube and you'll find hundreds of different ways that people retouch, and depending on the look that you're going for, you might find different tutorials that'll be better. This one will be a bit more, I don't want to say it'll be basic, because we will go through some things that aren't very basic, but it isn't going to be like some of the really crazy retouching that you can see out there that is just out of this world. This will look pretty good, but we're not going to spend hours on every pixel. So, having said that, I've just picked an image that we could work on that had, was mostly a headshot. It's an okay photo. I think it could be better in a lot of different ways. But when I did this shoot with this girl, headshots wasn't really part of the shoot. A lot of what we did was full-bodied stuff and some waist up. I always take a few headshots while I'm doing these sort of shoots in case they want some later on. So this is the one we're going to work on. It's okay. The hair and makeup is awesome because the hair and makeup was done by a really fabulous makeup artist, hair and makeup artist, Danny DeFreitas. I probably said that wrong, but look him up. He's amazing. So he did the hair and makeup for this, and then a lot of these images were used as composites, so that's why it's on a gray background. We'll probably come back to one of the other images I took of her that I did make composite images with and go through how I did those, but I just wanted to show you a headshot to start off with. So, having said that, when you first open up your image, you have to kind of make a decision. Do you want to start straight in with the retouching, or do you want to do a little bit of editing and then do the retouching? With this image, because it's just a headshot and I'm not going to probably do a whole lot else with it, I think we are going to just jump straight into the retouching, and then I'll do this editing a bit different than I normally do. We'll do the retouching, we'll make her face look amazing, and then we'll just make it look a little bit better. I'm not going to do a whole lot of editing after that. We'll just make the contrast look a bit better, because a lot of what we're going to do with the retouching is going to make it look better already, because we are going to do some dodging and burning, and that's going to make it look better instantly. So let's get started. So the first thing that I like to do with something like this is I'll first go in and I like to get rid of the blemishes straight off the bat. There's a few different ways you can do this. If you look around, and I can't remember what it's called now, I'll try to find it. If I can find it, I'll post a link in the comments. But somebody has an action out there that creates a really cool layer that really highlights every blemish on the skin. I use that sometimes. I'm not going to use that this time. Mostly because I'm not going to get that involved. Her skin looks pretty good. The makeup was really good, so there's not a whole lot of blemishes to remove, but there are quite a few. So to remove blemishes, create a new layer. Always work on new layers. That way you're not destroying anything. It's always editable. You can come back and work on things again. If you were to just do this on your background layer, you open yourself up to a whole world of problems. So get your new layer up. I use a lot of keyboard shortcuts, but if you hit J on your keyboard, it'll bring up the healing brush tool. And we're just going to zoom in here quite a bit. And we're just going to start getting rid of some of these blemishes. I'm going to start with like things like this hair. You always kind of want to go as close to what you're getting rid of as possible, and make sure you go in the same direction as the grains of the skin, so to speak. Or in this case, since we're getting rid of a hair, we want to go in the same direction as the hair. We'll get rid of these. First, we'll just get rid of these stray hairs that have drifted onto her forehead here. Alright, not a lot here, but we will just get rid of a few of these. Alright, that one's okay, I think. Just look for a few more, and we've got like one really big one here. We'll just get rid of that. And yeah, it goes a little bit over here. You get a little bit funky things when you get into the shadow areas of the skin. You have to kind of try to make sure you're sampling from the same tonality as what you're cloning out. So yeah, we'll get rid of this little bit here. And when it curves like this, you've really got to be careful, because your area will start to come into what you've already, into the area you're getting rid of, and then you end up bringing it back in another spot. That looks pretty good. Let's get rid of that. See, we have a little bit of a funky thing happen there. Just get rid of that. Oh, that's something on my screen. I thought that was something there, but it's actually just something on my screen. Alright, that looks good. Not going to worry about that little ones there. Over here, I always zoom in quite a bit on my photos. I mean, you can see down here, if you can read it, I'm zoomed in 204%. We'll probably end up coming in even more on this at some point. Right, so that's pretty much all the little stray hairs removed. Now what we're going to do is get rid of all these little bumps in the skin. And that's quite a time-consuming task. And you just want to sample as close to possible as to the area you're going to be getting rid of. So there's lots of resampling. You know, just about every spot that I'm getting rid of, I'm resampling from somewhere else. So we're just gonna keep going around and always work in like an area. Don't jump all over the place. So like we've just done this little area here, and now there's just little tiny ones down here we're gonna get rid of. Let's keep going down. What I'm going to do, I think I'm going to work down to her eyebrows here, and then go back up and go back down in the middle bit, down to that same area, and just work in sections like that. I'm trying to decide if I want to pause this video while I do this, because this bit might be a little bit time consuming and may end up getting a little bit boring, but we'll just see here how it goes. I think that little section over there looks pretty good. Alright, and then we move up, and there's not a whole lot. We got a little red spot there we'll get rid of. And then, you know, just little spots all in here we just want to get rid of. Again, the key to this whole retouching process actually is we don't want to change the way this girl looks. And I know that's a pretty hot topic when it comes to magazines like Vogue and Cosmo and things like that. A lot of anti-Photoshop people out there. I gotta be honest with you, I think most of that Photoshopping is not done by the photographers. It's done by the magazines themselves or retouchers that have nothing to do with the photographers. but it's a hot topic, and what we're doing here is we're not going to make her look different. We're going to make her look better, and I don't really think there's anything wrong with that. You know, people come in, you know, you do photos of them and they've got, you know, they're having a bad skin day. It happens. That's not what they always look like. You know, or they've got a cut on their lip. You know, there's nothing wrong with getting rid of those things. And with this, we're just getting rid of, you know, slight imperfections that are in her skin. These are not always going to be there. So it's not like we're changing the way she looks. These are, on this day, she had these skin imperfections. They're not always there. They won't always be there. Alright, so a little bit, just a little bit over here. Even though there's quite a bit that I can see going on, we're just going to get rid of the major ones here. And I think that looks pretty good. Alright, so now we come down onto the nose. There's just a few here. There's not a whole lot that we're going to get rid of. These really tiny little bumps, I don't know if you can see them or not, we're not really going to worry about, because those are going to be sorted out when we smooth the skin. Wrinkles, that's where you can really start changing the way somebody looks. I'm not going to really get rid of wrinkles. You can reduce them. This is a very young girl. She's 18, 19 years old, so she doesn't really have any wrinkles to get rid of. If I had an older subject here that had wrinkles, I'd show you how we would go about reducing them. We would never remove them, but you might reduce them a little bit. So I think this is looking pretty good so far. Like I said, she's not got a whole lot of issues that we need to deal with. Yep, that's all looking good. A little bit of redness right there. Yeah, a little bit down here. So I'm trying to keep talking because I know it can be quite boring watching somebody just do this. There's quite a bit to do down here. So what I'm going to pause the video really quick, finish up this area around her chin, and then we'll come back. Okay, we're back. It only took a couple of minutes, but it saved a couple of minutes of you sitting there listening to me ramble on. So this is her face after we've removed some of the major blemishes, although saying that, I see something right there I want to get rid of. That's after, obviously. This is before, and you can see the pretty considerable difference that we've made there. And all we've done is just tidied up her skin. We'll go down onto her neck and collarbone area, see if there's anything down here that needs a little bit of working on. There's not really anything. There are these hairs though. Trying to decide if I want to get rid of those, because I think we're gonna leave those. Man, that one is really quite big though. We are gonna get rid of this one here, because it is quite big and quite noticeable. So we will get rid of that. This one comes all the way down here. Get rid of this here. You got to be careful where the hairs overlap, so you got to do it in sections to make sure that you don't get funky healing going on, which can happen when they overlap. And this is all looking pretty good, so I think that looks pretty good. We're going to leave that like that for now. The little bits here, in reality, I would go through and fix that, but in the interest of time, we're going to leave it for now. So, we've got most of the blemishes removed from her face. Now what we're going to do is make her look even better. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the eyes. One thing, no matter what you do, the eyes lose contrast in a photo. They just do. So we need to bring a bit of that contrast back. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a curves layer. And we're just gonna look here right now. Don't really pay attention to anything else. We're just gonna look at the eyes. And we're gonna drag the slider down. That looks pretty good. And then bring that up a little bit. We don't want the eyes to go black. What we're looking at, I'm gonna move this down here a little bit. What we're looking at is the pupil, not the pupil, the iris, and seeing how the contrast looks in there. So that's before, that's after. That eye looks much better. So we activate that layer. On our layer mask, set our color to black, and if you hold down the Alt key and delete on a PC, backspace on a Mac, it'll fill that layer mask with black. So now we take our brush. Again, you can adjust the brush size by the left and right brackets on your keyboard, and we're just going to paint white over what we just did. And that's going to bring, and for some reason I feel like I have a hard brush. I do. You always want a soft brush. I don't know why my brush was so hard. Must have been doing something earlier. So then we just move over to the other eye and do the same thing. And now when we zoom out a little bit, I'll show you the before and the after. So that's before and that's after. See, and it just gives the eyes a lot more life to them. And I mean, just doing that is going to make a big difference on your photo. So I mean, we zoom out a little bit and look at it there, and you can see it's just made our eye color much, much better. Right, and if we wanted to, I think I will, create a hue saturation layer now, and we're going to clip that to the curves layer that we just did. You can do that by clicking here. You can also hover between the two layers, hold down the Alt key, it'll let you create a clipping mask. What this is going to do is this is only going to affect the eyes now. And I think I'm just going to bump up the saturation on it a little bit to give her eyes a bit more punch. You can see it's very subtle. It's hardly noticeable. I mean, if I really drag it up, you can see the difference there. We don't want to do that. We just want to give him, oh yeah, that looks good. Make that blue a bit more blue. That looks good. Yeah, her eyes look really good now. So the next thing we can do is we're going to work on the whites of the eyes. So again, we're going to create another curves layer. And we're only going to look at the whites of the eyes. And this time we're just going to drag up until we get a nice white. We don't want too white, but that white looks good. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to fill this layer mask with black now. And then we're going to paint in. Now with this, because the eyes, there's little tiny corners in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my white brush and I'm going to paint all around. I'm not going to care about the lines. I am going to care about the lines within the eye. I don't want to get inside the eye. Yeah, but all that stuff around there, I don't care. I just want to make sure all the whites are white. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And you'll see why I'm doing this in a second. Go underneath there, and then make sure we get all the whites over here. So now, obviously, we've gone into places we don't want. We're just going to switch to black now, and we're just going to paint back those areas. And the reason I do it this way is it's much easier to paint back these areas than it is to try to control your brush inside the eyeball and not paint outside the lines. This way you can just paint, go outside the lines, and then just take care of what you need to take care of. Right, so that's the whites, and obviously that's way too white. It always is. So you just reduce the opacity. I usually go to 50%. We'll bring this down. Oh, I hate when this thing does that. We'll bring this down. For some reason that's not working. We'll say around 40%, 42%. That looks good. So you can see it's whitened, but it doesn't look unnatural. And that's the important thing. We don't want them to look unnatural. Alright, so another thing we want to do is we're going to enhance the catch lights in our eyes a bit. And we do that in the same way. We're going to create another curves layer. And we're just going to pop this up. And then until those catch lights look pretty good. And we're going to do the same thing. Fill it with black. Take our brush. Put it on white. And we're just going to paint over our catch light area there. And now it actually doesn't look like it did a whole lot. Oh yeah, there we go. It did quite a bit. And now her eyes are done. And if we were to group these together, hit shift and then select the lowest one, and select them all, Command G, we'll put them in a group. We'll name this group eyes. And we can see all together what we've done to the eyes. And I can see a little bit of something I need to fix here. This is why we should name our layers as well. So I'm going to call this layer Iris, because that was the iris contrast I added. I can see where I've gone over into something there, so I'm just going to mask, take that out. It just drifted up into her eyelid there, and we don't want that. Alright, that looks much better. Yeah, there you go. Now we can see, although there's still a bit something going on here. And I don't know which layer that's in. It must be in the whites of the eyes one, which is going to be this one, which we'll name whites. And get black. Ah, you know what? It's in the catch light layer. I can see it there. Alright, there you go. That's much better now. Now the eyes look good. Alright, so that's the eyes done. We're going to do a few things to the lips, but that's going to come when we do our dodging and burning. So what we're going to do next is we're going to smooth out the skin. So click back up on your eyes layer. We're going to create a stamp layer above that. And to do that, you hold down Shift, Alt, Command, and E. And what that does is creates a layer that's a combination of all the layers below it. So we've got this nice layer. We're going to invert it by hitting Command and I. And we're going to set our blending mode to vivid light. And that's going to give us this gray screen. This method that I'm using here it's a little bit of a simplified version of something called high frequency separation. Google that and you'll find loads and loads and loads of videos on it. There's all sorts of different ways you can do this, some much more complicated than what I'm going to do. But I found this method I use right here works really good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to Filter, Other, and High Pass. And this High Pass filter normally is going to sharpen things, but because we've inverted this layer, it's actually going to blur. And what we want is we want a value that's going to even out all the different colors on her skin. 30 is pretty close. 36 is pretty close. 39 looks pretty good. All the different colors are all nice and smooth, and I know it doesn't look very good, but trust me, this looks good. The tones there's nice transitions between the highlights and the shadows, and the tones all match. That looks good. So then we want to bring some detail back, and again, because it's inverted, we're going to use a blur to do that. So Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And generally speaking, you want a value that's about 1/3 of what you used on your high pass. So we used 39, I think. So 1/3 of that would be 13. I think 13 is going to be too much. Yeah, 13 is too much. We're going to go somewhere. 9 is looking pretty good. 6 is not enough detail brought back. 8 looks pretty good. So we're going to go with 8. And now you can see we still got these pink areas around all the edges. So what we need to do is we go over to our layer here. First, let's rename it. We're going to rename this skin. So we go over to our skin layer and double click on it. And that's going to bring up the layer styles menu and the blending options. So down here in the bottom, you've got this box that says blend if gray. What you want to do is go over to this left slider, hold down the Alt key, and drag that just past the middle till you can see the difference here. You see things starting to kind of even out a bit. Somewhere around there looks pretty good, and then we're going to do the same thing with this slider. And this one you want to do until you see those pink halos go away. and that looks good. So we click OK. And so now you can see a before and after. That's before, that's after. And it's miles better. But this has applied this to the entire image. We don't want to do that. So we're going to create a layer mask. If you go down to your layer mask button and you hold down the Alt key, when you click on it, it will put a black layer mask on there for you. And now we just paint. We just paint on our layer mask with a white brush what we want back. And that's pretty simple. We want all of this back. You just don't want to go into the hair and things like that. And now when you're painting, you're really not going to notice too much changing as you go. That's one of the things I really like about this method, is that it does a lot, but it seems to do it rather subtly. The only times you really see things changing as you're going is when you get to darker colors and shadows. You don't want to go over the eyebrows, by the way, either, so avoid the eyebrows. You don't want to go over edges, you know, so we're not going to go over the edge of that nose there. Stick there. See, we're not going to, you don't want to go there. You don't want to go over these two areas at once. Under this eye here, bring that down. Make the brush smaller, get in above this eye here. A little bit as well, and then come down underneath and do the chin here. And that looks good. We're not going to do this, go over this line here, but we are going to come under here and do her neck and collarbone area here. Don't want to go over the hairs that are on her collarbone over there. And when you get to this edge down here, where you have a very distinct black edge, you don't want to go over it, and I'll show you why. So if I stop brushing, we go over that. If I go that way, you can see that little bit of a shadow. It's not that bad, but you would get that shadow there. And then, you know, we will, you know, see, you can see it happen there. I got a bit too close to the edges there. Just do a little bit there. And I think that's it. So that's her skin smooth. If we look at the before and after on that, you can see it's a drastic difference, but it's nice and subtle. And her skin now looks rather good. Right, so as I'm looking at this photo now, I can see a really big, this bright spot here is really, really bothering me. Before I do my dodging and burning, I think I want to try to tone that down a little bit. And to do that, I'm gonna try to use it in Nik software suite. You can get the whole Nik software suite for 110 pounds or something like that. I think it's quite cheap now. They got bought by Google. The suite used to be about 300 or 400 pounds. It's much cheaper now. So this is one called Viveza. I do use this occasionally. I'm going to use it for this. I can create a little control point that I want. And I want to try to just tone down this highlight in her forehead. And I can do that by just creating that control point and dragging down the brightness. And that looks a whole lot better. And I'm going to do one here on her cheek as well, because that one's looking a bit bright to me as well. There, drag down the brightness a little bit. Before, after. That looks a lot better. Alright, so we're going to click OK on that. And that's just going to come down and apply that filter. And you can see it just darkens down those two hot spots there. And that looks a lot better. So now the next thing I would do here is dodging and burning. I've created an action that does this for me, but it's dead simple. I only did it to save me some time. It's 2 layers, both filled with 50% gray, 1 layer set to soft light, and 1 layer set to overlay. Overlay does a lot more than soft light. I tend to use soft light for most everything, and I'll use the overlay one for fine lines and the hair. So with dodging and burning, what I think we'll do first, we'll go through and do the obvious obvious areas. So one of the obvious ones here is the lips. And what we want is our dodging and burning tool. I set it to mid-tones, exposure 20%. We're going to dodge the highlights on her lips here. And there's not one here, but we're going to brighten that little bit up there. And then we're going to burn down around the highlight there. And what this is going to do is give her lips a bit of three-dimensionality to them. It'll make them look more plump. So you can see the difference there. And then you zoom out, and that's where you can really notice how much better it makes her lips look. Right, so that's the first section there. And I don't like that lights I put in there, so I'm going to start from the beginning here again. I'm just going to delete those two layers, bring them up. We're not going to put that highlight on that top lip because it just didn't look right. A little bit under there and a little bit there. That looks good. We'll do a little bit of a burning up around the edge of the lips there. Yeah, that looks much better now. We don't have that weird highlight going on now. Alright, and then, so I mean, we're going to do the obvious ones. And the easy, obvious things to see are the shadows. So we're going to make our brush size bigger. If you hold down, by the way, when you're using the dodging and burning tool, it's on dodge. If you hold down the Alt key, it switches to burn. I'm going to hold down the Alt key here and just darken this shadow there a little bit. It's got a little bit of a shadow here. We're going to darken that up a little. Make our brush a little bit smaller. Darken that up a little bit there. Darken that up down around this side of the face as well. And what that's doing is it's just sculpting the face a little bit. And you can see it gives her face a bit more form. And we'll do a little bit there as well. Right, so that's the pretty obvious ones on her face there. And then we'll do the opposite with the highlights. Even though we just darkened this area, we're now going to burn that in a little bit. And the same thing with the cheek on that side. Go up into the forehead. We're just going to burn this whole area between the two shadows that we did. Go down the ridge of the nose and brighten that up. And then we're going to switch to the burn tool a little bit. We're just going to darken this side of the nose there because that's where a slight shadow is being cast. And then we're going to do the little bit under the chin and a little bit on the top of the lip there. And then when you look at what we've done, her face just has much more structure to it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to our overlay one. And she doesn't really have many creases or anything in her face. But we're going to do the more defined shadows now. So you can see this one under here. Just going to do that one there with the burn. I don't really know if I want to do much with that. But we'll do that. So a little bit there just to define that. And then we are going. This is where we really are going to do a lot. So we're going to go around the eyelash area here and burn this quite a bit. Same thing with this side. Go over this and burn that in quite a bit. We're going to go up and burn the eyebrows. And again, this is all on the overlay layer. We wanted to do a bit more than what we did on the soft light layer. Right, so if we zoom out there, and now we look at what we've done on the overlay layer, you can see what we've done. And I think I'm going to reduce that opacity here in a minute, but you can see what it looks like so far. And I'm going to paint back over that. Alright, we're going to start over with the overlay layer there. I didn't like highlighting that one there. Alright, so let's go back up. I'm going to change my exposure down to 10% because it's doing a bit more than I want it to do here. And we're going to do the eyelash there, do the bottom eyelash there, go over here, top eyelash, and bottom eyelash there. Make this a bit bigger, just do a couple quick passes over the eyebrows. Alright, now we look at what we've done, and that's much better, right? So I think that's the face pretty well done. Like I said, she doesn't have any real creases and things of that nature that we want to really accentuate. So I think that's that. Now we will go on to the hair, and I will put my exposure back up to 20%. Hair is really easy, and you want it on the overlay, and you want it quite a bit. So you can see this highlight in the hair there. We're just going to paint over that highlight. I always like to try to go through and do all the highlights first because they're the easiest ones to see and really accentuate. So we go back here and get all that area there, get this area here, and then over here, it's a little bit trickier over here because there is light hitting it in spots, but it's a bit hard to really see where. That's an obvious one down there. Alright, so we've gone through and done those, and then you want to just do a bit of burning around where you've highlighted, and that's just going to bring out those highlights a bit more. So we got that area there, a little bit over here, and then here, a little bit there. And this is just going to really make her hair pop when we're done. So we did a little bit there, so I just want to do a little bit around it to make it stand out a bit. A little bit there, and then we got a nice highlight there to bring out, and then darken that up there. Right, so then when we zoom out, we go boom, you can see what we've done to the hair and the face. And sometimes it's not a good idea to look at your before and after because you might think you've done too much. But if you're looking at it, I guarantee you it looks fine. It's when you look at that before and after and you're like, whoa, you think you've done too much. So I think that looks pretty good. Don't think there's a whole lot more we're gonna do with her face. I think she's looking pretty good. There's some stray hairs over here going into the gray background that I am gonna get rid of. So we just create a new layer. These are healing brush tool again, and these are dead easy to get rid of, especially because we don't have a busy background, so we don't have to worry about bricks or other things like that. But the problem, because we don't have a busy background, is that the hairs stand out a little bit more because there's nothing to keep our eyes from seeing them, because it's just a solid color back there. There's not a lot here, but they are bothering me, so we're going to get rid of them. And for something like this, we'll just and I don't like what that did, so, and that looks alright. And on this side, there's quite a few hairs kicking around. We just need to get rid of. And this isn't, it's not rocket science. It's not hard. It's just taking your time, really, taking your time and learning what it is that you're doing. That's the biggest thing, taking your time. A lot of people nowadays, especially because of the accessibility of the internet provides us with, there's a lot of people that want like instant gratification on things, and sometimes that's just not possible. You need to be patient and learn. So that looks good. I think what we're gonna do now is we're gonna sharpen her up. I have created an action here to do my portrait sharpening, but I'll show you what that action does. So we're gonna create another stamp layer, and again, that's Shift Alt Command and E. We're going to zoom in here. It's already a pretty sharp image, but we're just going to sharpen it up a bit more. We're going to go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. And we're going to, this is going to look crazy, I know. Because we're going to do quite a bit here. We're going to take this up probably around 150, 183. That's looking good. And let's drop the threshold. Is it raise? Ah, yeah, let's raise the threshold up a bit. Okay, so to the point where it's looking rather over sharpened, and that's looking rather over sharpened now, and that's good. So we're going to click OK, and you're probably saying, but George, that is massively over sharpened, and you would be correct. What we're going to do is we're going to create a mask now for that sharpening layer, and what we're going to do is we're going to go into channels, and since this is a white girl we're working on, we're going to command click on the red channel, and that's going to create a selection based upon the red channel. Go back over to our layers palette and just click the mask button while that selection's up, and that's going to create a mask based upon the red channel. And most of the time when you do that, you then want to invert that mask. And what this does is now you can see, you invert the mask, by the way, by hitting Command I when you're selected on the mask. And what this does, if you see, that's before, and it was already quite sharp, and now after, we've sharpened everything except the pores and stuff on her skin. So again, before, after, before, after. And that's why we want that unsharp mask to look like it's overdone, because this, when we create the layer mask, it's not allowing a lot of the sharpening to go through. So you want it to be too much, and then when it comes through, it looks pretty good. And then we're just going to reduce the opacity of that a little bit. Usually I go down to around 75% or so. Zoom in again, have a quick look. Yeah, it doesn't look over sharpened to me. I think that 75% looks pretty good. Right, so that's the beauty bit done, the retouching done. We've sharpened her up. Probably just need to increase the contrast a little bit on this, make it just a little bit better. So I'm going to try one of my normal methods on this, and that's to create a hue saturation layer. I'm going to set the blending mode to soft light, reduce the saturation because it massively oversaturates the image, and then reduce the opacity on that layer there. That looks pretty good. So, oh, my opacity went down to 0 somehow. Put it back up. I think it was around 45% or so. So that's before, that's after. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And then because she's on a gray background, you might see about, so create another stamp layer. I'm going to go to Filter, Render, Lighting Effects. And this is kind of just to darken up the edges of the image. So once this loads, I'm going to move this center over her and make this a bit smaller. Yeah, this is going to be much better. So what this does is I have it on spotlight, so it's going to put a light on her and kind of darken everything else as if we were shining a spotlight on her. We can increase, and decrease the size of our hotspot there. The intensity is how much extra light we're adding to it. So we don't want to go up here. It starts to blow everything out. Probably, see, I saw the whites burning out a little bit there, so we're gonna go around there. It looks a bit dark, but we can adjust this with levels afterwards. What I'm mostly concerned with is everything else, and I like what it's doing over here. It's made that black, and it's really focusing your attention on her. I think that looks good, so I'm gonna click OK. When it's done, you can see the before and the after. And I think we do need to do just a little levels adjustment here. So create a levels layer, pop that up to your first little bump, and then grab this bottom eyedropper, hover over the image, hold down Alt, and you can see if anything's burnt out. There's tiny, tiny, tiny little highlights that are burnt out on her there, but they're not worth worrying about. They're dots. And that's it. I think we're done. So here's this image. This is what we started with, and that's what we finished with. And I think you'll agree she looks a million times better. She's already good looking to begin with, and now we've made her look even better. Till next time, if there's any videos you want me to make, please leave comments in the comment section below with ideas you have for tutorials. If there's something I didn't cover, something you don't understand, again, leave comments and I will answer them. Be sure to check out my website, www.gfphoto.co.uk, and I'll see you later. All right.